slightly different format. I'm just gonna, we're gonna invite each of our speakers up. They're gonna get between 5 or 6 minutes. We'll have a round of applause and then switch the speakers. There's no Q&A after each speaker like other events that you've been to where we do a Q&A. We don't have time for that, and this is a much shorter and more speedy program. So that's the technical part I have to introduce about that. Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
All right, so we've got 5 awesome speakers. Micah Stark, our brave first speaker, is going to come in.
Someone drew the short straw.
And be generous and gracious to these community members who just, not public speakers, didn't say I had 20 minutes in me, but I had maybe 5.
Maybe 5. Maybe 5.
Maybe 5.
Maybe 5. Well, thank you. Good morning. My name is Micah, and I want to thank Creative Mornings for having me and having the others this morning. I want to start by just acknowledging 2 people who are in the audience today, both who've had a big impact on what I'm going to talk about. So first is my wife, Holly, who's been just a fantastic partner and co-parent, who's really brought a lot more awareness to me about what's going on with our boys and boys in this country, which I'm going to be talking about. The second is Mary Jo Brown, who got me engaged with the Women's Foundation several years ago and who's been a great interlocutor on all things of gender equality. So thank you both. So the idea for this talk for me has been germinating for many years, and over the summer, I think heeded Brene Brown's advice about courage and leaning in and getting into the arena. So I appreciate this opportunity that Creative Mornings provides to finally say or try to say what I've been thinking about. So what do I mean by the lost boys? Simply, I mean that in this country right now, we have either lost or in the midst of losing a lot of our boys and young men. And I'll tell some stories and show some data points about what is going on with some of the health and well-being of our boys and men. But to start, I want to share 2 things about me, which explains why I'm passionate about this topic. So this is the first one. So these are my 2 boys, Owen and Finn. This was taken a few years ago. I'm still amazed every time I see this photo what beautiful children Holly and I were able to produce. This is a little more recent of what they look like. And we're lucky to be raising 2 great boys. And as all parents know, it's a lot of work. So raising boys, I've had a front row seat to how they view the world, what they experience, what they feel, what they're willing to share about what they're feeling, what they're not willing to share about their feeling. And because at this stage in their life, most of their friends are boys, and I've also had the opportunity to coach some youth sports with them. So my experience with them and their cohort is largely to have been around boys. The second thing to know about me, which I've already referenced, is when I was an undergrad at UNH, I was a women's studies minor, and fast forward now, I'm one of 3 men on the board of directors for the New Hampshire Women's Foundation, thanks to Mary Jo. And I love that organization and their mission to invest in opportunity and equality for women and girls in the Granite State. And I believe strongly that it is important for men to be joined with women on these important issues facing girls and women. I think for most people, including myself, when we hear the phrase gender equality, we think of girls and women, and for good reason. Goal 5 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals reads, to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. And I want to sort of pause for a minute about some things here about language. So I'm very aware that as we as a society tend to talk about gender, and as I'm doing it right now, we tend to use a very traditional gender construct that is not as inclusive as it needs to be, and it's something we've got to work on. The second thing is really important for me to say that this is a both and. This is not an either or. We need to continue to throw all of our energy into women's rights and opportunities for girls and women. As I'm going to make the case, we need to do the same for boys and men who are beginning to fall behind. Okay, let's get back to the boys. So when they were like probably this age, and then when they are now older, they're 13 and 11, Inevitably when Holly and I would talk to them about, things at school, if you can get past like one-word answers of Tay was fine. But inevitably, we'll hear things like this pretty often from them. And I'm going to talk about some data that explains why I think they and a lot of their boyfriends feel this way. So starting at a very early age, boys are way more likely to get expelled from preschool. One of our sons, when he was in the second or third grade, was put on an IEP. I recently asked our local school district what the gender breakdown was, and boys are twice as likely in our district to be on an IEP. We also have experience with one of our kids being diagnosed with ADHD. Nationwide, boys are 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD. Boys are more likely to drop out. They're less likely to go to college now. And if they get to college, I work at the university, so I see this firsthand too. If they get to college, the male students, boys, are way more likely than girls to get arrested when they're in college. When I think about this, and my wife and I talk about our boys' experience, it raises a question about, are our schools conducive for boys and how boys learn? And I want to say one phrase that drives me nuts hearing about it inside of school and outside of school is boy energy. And boy energy has such a loaded negative connotation, and I hope that's a phrase that we can get away from. Trends don't get much better. Men right now are less likely to be in the workforce than women, way more likely to commit suicide. Unfortunately, every time we hear a mass shooting, it's almost always a man. Bulk of the prisoners, and this is worth a whole other talk, the amount of men in prison who come from dad-deprived homes. Okay, so bottom line, I would like to encourage us to expand our concept of gender equality to include all children of all genders. We all benefit when all kids are thriving, regardless of gender, and I hope we can bring more attention to some of the struggles that our boys are facing. Thank you.
Next up, I'd like to introduce Damla, and I'm going to take it from here.
Hi everyone. My name is Damla Aktiken. I am here to talk to you about unmet needs and the energetic layers of our needs. In 2012, I gave birth and I completely lost my connection to my body and my soul. In the chaos, there were all of my unmet needs coming up to the surface. And yes, there were the needs of the moment. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I wasn't taking care of myself, obviously, as a new mom. But actually not obviously, right? I just didn't have that sense of taking care of myself. But it was the things that were coming up, the chaos, the darkness that was coming up was so much bigger than what was happening in the moment that I began to notice certain things. And when I looked into the darkness, I started to see the 5-year-old in me, the 5-year-old who wasn't seen, heard, or understood. I started to notice the teenager in the same darkness, the teenager who didn't get to express her creativity as she needed to. I started to hear the voices of my ancestors in the darkness, my ancestors who went through war, famine, forced migration, abuse, deep loss. So the moment of choice for me was, yes, all of this is here, so what do I do? And my decision was, no matter how all of this got here, all of this hurt, trauma, whatever you call it, it's here, and I'm going to take responsibility for it, and I'm going to take care of it. I started to look for ways to ease the darkness and meet my needs. I came across a number of vibrational healing methods and practices, tools that were starting to make a difference in my life. And I started to share these tools with others as an energy healer. As I started to share these tools, I started to recognize how much unmet needs are present. I started to see woman after woman, man after man, who would come to me with all sorts of different ailments. Some would have childhood issues, some would have issues with boundaries, with relationships, with speaking their truth. But underneath all of that, I could see the roots being unmet needs. And they would say to me, Damla, I drink my green juice, I drink my smoothies, I exercise, I go to yoga, I meditate every single day. Why am I still feeling awful? And my response to that was, because you have unmet needs, you have compounded unmet needs, and because your needs have energetic layers. What do I mean by that? You're not just the skin and flesh and blood. You are an electromagnetic being that expands and that reaches above and beyond your skin. You have an energetic beingness that expands beyond your now. You carry all your childhoods, all your nows. You carry the potentials of all your futures. Not only that, in your DNA, in your blood, you carry all the stories, all the traumas, as well as the gifts and the wisdom of your ancestors here in the now. And you get to make a choice. You get to make a choice and say, all of this belongs, all of this is mine. And you take responsibility of your energetic and physical needs. And when you take responsibility, you got to recognize it's not the responsibility of your partner, of your lover, of your parents, of your caregivers, if you have any caregivers, of your community, of your children to take care of your needs. It's your responsibility to recognize, name, prioritize, and meet your needs with or without help. And when you begin to think of it this way, so this life here that you're responsible for, when you begin to take care of your vibrational needs, you begin to not just take care of the now. Your needs matter because when you take care of your needs, you're taking care of all of the inner children in you. You're taking care of and opening up to all of the future potentials. You're taking care of and honoring and remembering all of the ancestors. And not only that, you're creating a new vibrational quantum reality where each and every being who gets in touch with you, who interacts with you, benefits from you. You are raising the vibration, as we like to say in the energy healing community. So I want to ask you this. How do you intend to take care of the life that's here in you now? What do you need right now? What in you wants to be seen, heard, understood, and loved? What in you is waiting to be spoken out loud, created, brought out into the world? Who in you is screaming? Is it the 2-year-old who wants to be seen? Is it the teenager who wants to go out and play? Is it your ancestors waiting, longing to be remembered by you? And if you're not sure where to start, I was there, I was you. If you're not sure where to start, or if you find yourself without any time, resources, energy to even begin to think about your needs, I get that. We all have responsibilities, we all have people that we need to pay attention to. But all I'm asking is, how can you pay attention to yourself, even in those times where you feel like time is an issue, resources are an issue, like you have zero motivation, zero energy. And in those moments, can you place one hand on your heart? And can you say to yourself, I'm here for you. And it may not be right here and right now, but when the time is right, I will take care of you as best I can, with small steps, with tiny steps, and with or without help. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
We're going to go get the mic taken off.
Up next, we have Matt Entwistle, and he's going to talk to us about getting lost.
Yeah, I'd like to just start by saying I'm honored to be with this group of this panel of speakers. Listening to those last couple of people, I'm sitting there going, whoa. It's all relative. All right.
You got this.
10 years ago, I moved from Kodiak Island, Alaska to Washington, D.C. I was 24 at the time, and much of the work I've been involved with at that point in my life, it all had taken me to some pretty wild and remote areas of the country. I had called Yellowstone National Park home just the year prior. Upon arrival to D.C., I moved into a 250-square-foot windowless basement apartment in Petworth. I had no job lined up or any real plans. I was taking a leap of faith and moving in with my partner at the time in support of her and her work with the Department of the Interior. The joke of Crocodile Dundee came up more than once because most government security buildings are pretty tight, and I'm used to carrying a knife for work, or had been. For the first couple of weeks in the nation's capital, I allowed myself to get in my own way. I created barriers to my success by developing a story about how my particular skills and experience did not lend itself to my new location. I like to consider myself resourceful, and yet here I was, immobilized by a grid and my perception of how I fit into this new place. Pretty common sight in downtown D.C. Clearly, my judgment was impaired just by my footwear choice. Whether we're referring to being lost in the woods, at IKEA, or in a more existential way in our lives, it is often vulnerability that we are experiencing. It is about being exposed in some way and feeling unprepared in those moments. This can threaten our ego, our beliefs, and in some cases, it can threaten our life. The cost of playing it safe when we have the chance to lean into the unknown can often land us in a similar place of discomfort in the end. Sometimes being lost is being stuck. Just ask the creative or entrepreneur sitting next to you. All of the mentorship, training, and practice that I've had with search and rescue crews as a first responder, a park ranger, and a guide didn't feel quite enough to prepare me for my first couple weeks in the district. That very physical, visceral, and flighty response to being lost does not always allow us to consult our intuition, our experience, or our resources. It wasn't until I walked out the front door of my apartment on a cold January day and started allowing myself the luxury of observation, contemplation, and people-watching that things started to shift. I've always enjoyed being immersed in places foreign to my rearing and experience, and here I was, getting it live and direct, right out my front door. We often get exactly what we've asked for, although it isn't until we allow ourselves the luxury of clear vision that we see the very fortune laid out in front of us. I was living among resilience in terms of the people I was surrounded by. Most of my neighbors had been there for 3 generations or more and endured segregation, the U Street riots, and now a quickly gentrifying neighborhood that was beginning to displace them from the community that they had established almost a century ago. How's that for being lost? It is among this community where I found my niche by connecting with the young people, first on the basketball court or at the corner store, and eventually by working as a crew leader for a nonprofit focused in D.C.'s metro area. These were called community crews, and they were made up of teens 16 or older who needed to work. Many of these kids had to raise their siblings. They contributed to rent and carried the kind of responsibilities and weight that most of us don't know until much later in life, if ever. It is here where I was able to bring what I felt was valuable in terms of leadership. The reality was, I needed these kids to help me navigate my own transition, and come to find out, they needed an adult to truly see and acknowledge them, to foster trust, confidence, and value in their own lives. Together, we worked to build community gardens, fences, bridges, and trails in the city's green spaces, medical centers, and parks. We shared our individual stories, debated each other's opinions, and made space to listen to one another as people rarely do who can come from varied backgrounds. Most of these kids had never swam in a natural body of water, let alone trusted someone they just met to take them far from familiarity. We traveled to places like New River Gorge and Shenandoah Valley, where I introduced them to climbing and whitewater rafting. On more than one occasion, I got that, "oh hell no, Matt" look from the group. A look I've been getting most of my life from friends and family, and something I now recognize as the precursor to an uncomfortably meaningful experience. When trust is your currency, you can get to places and to depths never imagined. You can often get there faster alone, but you can go much further when the experience is shared. It was important to me that these young adults felt the privilege and perspective of deep quiet, of sleeping under the stars, and of being awestruck by the kind of wonder and peace these places can bring. It is just too easy to take these things for granted. What could be more important for young people growing up in this oddly social yet disconnected world than forging a relationship with themselves and each other in wild places like these? I think about my time with those kids often. They're all adults now, some with children of their own. The kind of shared experience that was built with those individuals mirrors the kind of ethos that I strive for as a guide. To me, there is no difference in working in an urban zone or on the Yukon River in terms of desired outcomes. It is humility and human connection that facilitates growth and value that has lasting appeal. Each time I have the opportunity to take others into a new environment to them, it has the potential to create a profound and lasting impact. I am reminded of this again and again by my own experiences. My chapter in DC is no exception to this. In the end, it is about taking pause to recognize opportunity in the face of those moments that otherwise leave us feeling lost. It is for this reason alone I'm not interested in loss-proofing my world. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you. Wow. Up next, we have Kate Harris. Come on up, Kate.
It was no more than 90 seconds, but it felt like a world of time. There was an overwhelming musty smell, a heavy scent that clings to your clothes and stays with you as a reminder, an eerie, echoing silence, and a sense of lonely hopelessness. At the bottom of this utility well, the sound of my skull hitting concrete on the way down was echoing in my ears. I could already hear my mom crying on the other end of a phone. My entire support system, minus my husband Keith, felt a world away. As I got to my feet, I definitely wasn't processing anything beyond, "get me out of here." So I'm lucky the bundle of wires popping out of boxes at the bottom of the well weren't electrified, since I stood on them to help me reach the outstretched arms from above, trying to rescue me. I'd been on a photo shoot with my business partner / husband Keith, photographing the exterior of a building in fresh snow. I wanted a wider frame, so without looking, I had taken a few steps backwards. Behind me, a 10-foot deep concrete utility well had been accidentally uncovered by a plow. That's 15 feet of distance for my head. Now out of the well, I was lying alone in the snow, waiting to go to the hospital. I knew my life had changed, and that's what filled my mind, rather than fear, that, and how lost and alone I felt. At that moment, every sign pointed towards doom, but I come from a family of incredibly stubborn women. I like to say I'm the trifecta of stubborn: Italian, New Yorker, and Jewish. We don't take no for an answer. My 20s were spent pushing the boundaries of physical and intellectual standards, achieving the 1% or else. So living on the negative side of lost wasn't an option for me. That said, venturing outside my comfort zone always sucks. But I know it also always results in growth. I found I didn't need to work too hard to get there. One post on Facebook resulted in over 200 supportive replies. People cooked for me, visited while I sat with a blindfold in my post-injury confinement, dropped off chocolate and tea. Keith read me notes and emails since I couldn't focus my eyes, along with taking over the entire workload for our business and driving me to upwards of 15 wellness appointments a week. I was in sensory deprivation for weeks. Not being the type who has ever asked for help, this level of unsolicited support was humbling. I moved here from New York City. I don't have family here. The Seacoast emanated a sense of community which drew me to wanting to live here, but I was still an outsider from away. The love, however, has been overwhelming, and I suddenly realized the Seacoast is my community, my extended family. It had been there all along, and it's what has kept me going. Now, 10 months post-accident, I'm often asked, "Are you better?" Which I genuinely appreciate, and it fills me with warmth knowing that people remember and care. But the truth is, having a traumatic brain injury, or TBI, there really is no typical recovery. Better, for me, means adopting to a new, necessary lifestyle. I no longer play soccer, ride horses, go sledding, have dinner parties, go to concerts, run half marathons, head out on spontaneous adventure sessions. I can't memorize things or really even remember much of anything short term. Poor Keith often feels like Adam Sandler in the movie 50 First Dates. I drive like a 90-year-old, the type that probably shouldn't have a license, which makes Keith a chauffeur on top of his many other roles. I take a multitude of pills every day. I have a rigidly strict diet, a wonderful team of healthcare practitioners, and lots of trial and error. I wear custom earplugs and eyeglasses. I handle life moment to moment, crisis mode, as my therapist says, rather than setting goals and dreams, since I don't know what tomorrow will look like. We did extensive renovations on our house to brain-proof it, and have purged much of our life to achieve a more simplistic existence. I can't always predict what or when symptoms will flare up, like nausea, dizziness, headaches, loss of balance, disorientation, stuttering, complete overwhelm, and fatigue. TBI is a hidden disability, so you wouldn't know any of this just by looking at me, which is both a benefit and a curse. In many days, I feel like I'm fighting an invisible battle. But not a day goes by where I don't get constant reminders of my supportive community or go to sleep without a hug. I've had amazing one-on-one conversations of depth and substance with so many of you, which I wouldn't trade for the lively group gatherings of my past life. I'm an active member and founder of a post-concussion TBI support groups of others suffering with this covert disability. I don't need to be in the 1% anymore to feel a sense of worth and accomplishment. My connection to you all overwhelmingly supersedes that. And because of this compassion and connection, I know I will never feel lost at the bottom of a well again. Thank you to everyone here, and thank you to my business partner / husband, chauffeur, nurse, king of patience, #1 fan, and guy who gives me excitement to get out of bed every morning, Keith.
That was magical. Thank you.
Here we go. All right. Allison,
Oh, yeah. Okay, here you go.
you might.
Thank you.
All right, cool.
Allison, do this.
Yeah, do this.
The closing. Just do that. There once was a tree. I'm the tree. And she loved a little boy. And the little boy would come and he would swing from her branches and rest in her shade and he would eat her apples. And the tree was happy. And the boy was happy. And as the years went on, the little boy grew into kind of a turd. I am paraphrasing here. But every time he would come to the tree, he would ask her for things. And the tree obliged. The tree gave him her branches, her leaves, her apples, and then eventually really everything that she had. And the little boy was kind of happy. And the tree said that she was happy, but I think she was fooling herself. And as you might know, the book ends with the tree giving literally everything to the boy, and the boy returns old and weary and takes a seat on her stump. And the book says that she was happy, but let's be honest, that tree's dead, right? So we cannot corroborate that account. So, this book has been a staple in homes. It was certainly a staple in mine. I own it now. But now, as a mom, I look at this book, and it's illustrative of something that I not so affectionately call the mom lie. Now, the mom lie goes like this. In order to love your children well, in order to do motherhood well, you have to put yourself last all the time. Moms in the room? Right? So if you're going, where's this message? Where is this message shown to moms? Ask a mother, right? Just ask any mom and she will be able to tell you, right? Ask her how her postnatal care was. Ask her, how her paid maternity leave wasn't, right? Right? Ask her how she feels when she wants to do something for herself. Ask her how she feels when she wants to go to the bathroom by herself, right? Now, I am super lucky. I have 3 really cute little girls. But if you were to tell them that the world does not revolve around them, they would look at you with the indignation that Galileo faced in the 1600s. I can hear my 4-year-old going, "You're kidding. Mom, you're kidding." She just wouldn't believe it. But the reality is, the world doesn't need any more self-sacrificing women. And my girls don't need it either. Because the lines between us have become blurred at various points in my life with them, my blessed and wonderful life with them. So much so that there have been times where I have felt absolutely lost. Where remembering my dreams, my hopes, my goals, my wants becomes really hard because I'm thinking about their dreams, their hopes, their wants, their needs, and I kind of just fall to the shadows. So it's been a lot of coming out of that. And let me be real, I both need to give this talk and listen to this talk, right? This is an ongoing journey for me. I have not figured it out. But there are a few things that I have figured out along the way. The first thing is that I have to do a lot of yeses and nos. The nos are sometimes, no, mommy's going to go to the bathroom by herself, right? Or, no, mommy's going to let you play with your sisters because that's why we had them. It's not true. And then yeses, really great, awesome yeses. Like, yes, I will try something new. I will take tennis lessons, which is like so fun. Or yes, I'll give a talk at Creative Mornings and sweat profusely. Right? All of these yeses and these nos are kind of leading me back to
drawing those kind of firmer boundary lines around the self that I am. And really, it all stems from this idea of the bothness, right? It's a very clinical term here, you guys. I can love myself and love my children. Yes. Right? Yes. I can affirm my dreams and their dreams, right? I don't have to come last all the time. Now, sometimes I do, right? And sometimes they do, right? And that's just life. The bothness. So I'm trying to live in the bothness. I know, right? I really just put this in here, and I was feeling thirsty, right? That's what they teach you in kindergarten when you agree with somebody. Right. Okay. So now I'm going to retell the story. Okay. I'm the tree. Once there was a tree, and she loved the little boy, and the little boy would come and he would swing from her branches and rest in her shades and eat her apples. And the little boy was happy, and so was the tree. And as the years grew on, the little boy came to the tree and he asked her for things. And the tree said, "Oh, that's great, but I will teach you how to grow your own tree. And I will teach you how to have those branches be strong. And you know what? Quit eyeing my apples."